Hey guys, this is Esther. My presentation is on the economics of Zambia, so I'm just going to get started. Zambia and its egalitarian hunter-gatherer economies lay untouched by Europeans for centuries. It wasn't until the mid-19th century, during the age of new imperialism, when Western forces penetrated it. In 1888, Seal Rhodes, spearheading British commercial interests, obtained mineral right concessions from local chiefs. That same year, northern and southern Rhodesia were proclaimed British spheres of influence. This economic exploitation across much of south-central Africa would be known as part of the Scramble for Africa. Eventually, southern Rhodesia was annexed formally and granted self-government in 1923. Northern Rhodesia, however, was declared a British protectorate in 1924. Part of the reason Britain kept northern Rhodesia was due to the discovery of vast copper mines along its northern border. But, as to be expected with imperialism, the economic benefits of this new discovery were not mutual. The copper profits went to Johannesburg and Salisbury, as well as to London, not to the local businesses. Furthermore, since non-Zambians performed almost all skilled labor in mines, government, and businesses, northern Rhodesia grew to be dependent on these imperial metropoles. Although there were Zambian and Pan-African visions for a continent free of colonial domination, Zambia was very much controlled by its close relations with neighboring white-dominated countries. Thus, Zambia's independence in 1964 did not alter the basic structures of the nation's economic dependence. Domestically, there were few trained and educated Zambians in government, and the economy was largely dependent on foreign expertise. In the late 60s, Zambia had become the third largest copper miner in the world. It was expanding its manufacturing capability, but was neglecting agricultural and rural development. However, the economic order took a dramatic turn in April 1968. During this time, President Kaunda spearheaded the Mulungushi reforms, which nationalized a number of businesses, most importantly, the copper industry. A soon after collapse in copper prices, a shock in oil prices, and economic mismanagement in the 70s devastated the Zambian economy. By the 80s, Zambia was one of the most indebted nations in the world, and in 1983 it was forced to turn to a lender of last resort, the International Monetary Fund, or the IMF. For those who are unfamiliar with the IMF, it is an intergovernmental organization assigned to the basic task of stabilizing international monetary exchange rates. So, before Zambia received a loan from the IMF, they were required to agree to the fund's structural adjustment policies. So the fund listed a series of conditionalities that were tied to the loan. These conditionalities, which were supposed to improve the state's economic efficiency, included the ending of price controls on essential commodities, the devaluation of the kwacha, limiting wage increases, cuts in government expenditure, promotion of economic diversification, and the removal of subsidies on maize and fertilizers. Altogether, these policies promoted the liberalization of the Zambian economy, and they contributed to a few outcomes. First, the elite were able to protect their living standards, while the middle and lower class bore a disproportionate share of the burden of austerity. Second, deregulation allowed for a flood of cheap imports, which made locally manufactured goods uncompetitive. And finally, the removal of maize subsidies sparked both hunger and riots in the Copperbelt region. President Kaunda abandoned the program and introduced his own initiatives, earning the condemnation of the international community and the withdrawal of assistance from the IMF, World Bank, and a number of bilateral donors. Although there was significant GDP growth in his Zambian-led program, it was not sustainable, and Zambia, once again, had to apply for an IMF loan in 1989. In 1991, the movement for multi-party democracy took the reins of government. They agreed to continue with the reform package determined by the IMF and the World Bank, and they privatized many state industries and endorsed free market principles. In April 2005, Zambia was further provided significant debt relief under the IMF and World Bank's Heavily Indebted Poor Countries Initiative. The 2008 economic crisis hurt Zambia, but the country rebounded quickly in 2010. Generally, over the past decade, growth in Zambia has been strong, and inflation has declined from 30% to single digits. Today, Zambia still depends on external linkages. The relationships are often asymmetrical and lead to a dependence on external trade and technology, to an outflow of funds, and domestic inequality, especially regional inequality, as you can see here. The majority of companies Zambia works with are multinational or foreign-owned. For example, China controls the majority of mineral processing in Zambia. One might say that Zambia has never been able to shuck its dependence on foreign investment in the global north. Then again, if we look at the changing global dynamics, one might wonder if this statement is entirely true. After all, a key feature of the world's economy in recent years has been the growing integration among groups of countries, and it seems that Zambia has their foot in the door with that, as it is both a member of COMESA and SADC. Furthermore, over half of Africa's trade is currently conducted as South-South exchanges. Some people are saying that Africa holds the potential China did 20 years ago. It's interesting to note that despite its remarkable increase in real GDP, Zambia remains one of the world's poorest countries. Its troubled economic past is still clearly impacting its economy today, and it raises many questions about the future of tomorrow. So, there are many questions to be asked, but here's one idea I'd like you to ponder. And here are some additional questions if you're interested. Bye-bye!